Kilimanjaro.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Congratulations, really, for considering to take part in like a challenging outdoor personal adventure like Kilimanjaro is. And also, you get big props and congratulations for choosing Embark as your, adventure company partner. You're getting a really good partner with that. And thank you for being here today. Um, I've kind of been involved with helping people go from like couch potato to the summit, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. And I've kind of really found that about 4 months is the bare minimum amount of time you need to kind of prepare for that. Of course, more time is better. Um, so really, we're going to talk about training for that goal. And I may want you to think just for a moment about what you think your goal is. Is your goal to get to the summit of Kilimanjaro? What's kind of your goal? Because when you train for something, you should have that in mind. And I may want to throw a little bit of a curveball into you when I say maybe the summit isn't your goal, because that's only half the hike. Getting to the top, you still have to get back down. So you really have to have your eye on the prize, eye on safety, and getting a lot further than the summit. Really, your goal is to get safely to the summit and return back down and make it home to brag about your adventure, So I think when you talk about training for that, there's some do's and some don'ts, and I can get into like a high-level overview of the training program and then drill down on some specifics that you really want to focus on. But let me start with the don'ts, because there's a whole lot of things you should be doing, but there's really only 3 don'ts in your training. So I'd like everybody just to think about this as I talk about it. The first one is failing to kind of recognize Embark as your partner. They're not just a service or a company you hire to do something for you or to get you to someplace. They're your partner. And when you think of a partner, that implies a whole lot of things. That's like a back and forth relationship where you rely and trust on each other. And the biggest thing people going on these trips fail to do is take really good advantage of that partnership. You get like an extensive pre-trip dossier. Like there's like itineraries and there's videos on their webpage and tutorials. You got to take a deep dive into everything that Embark, gives you, and avail yourself to that. Very important. A lot of people fail to do that. Don't fail to do that. Take a look at everything Embark has for you. You really can't train for your adventure if you don't know what the adventure is. So learning that is very, very important. The next big don't I don't think you should fall into is don't think you're fit enough. It doesn't matter what kind of sports you take part in, what you do in your normal life when it comes to training. A trip like Kilimanjaro is going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard. You know it's going to be hard. It's going to be harder than you think. Kilimanjaro, it gets cold at the top. We all know that, but it's going to be colder than you think. You're going to get tired on the trail. We all know that. Like 10, 12, 14 days of hiking, you're going to get tired. You're going to get more tired than you can ever imagine. So thinking you're fit enough and not really training is the second big mistake you can make. The third biggest don't is not having the proper gear and equipment or the quality clothing that you're going to need to get through the adventure. More hopes are dashed because you don't have the right stuff or your stuff fails than you can imagine. So those are the 3 big don'ts that I'll talk about before we get into the do's. Make sure you take advantage of everything, all the resources Embark has for you. Make sure that you train. Don't think that you're fit enough. And we'll talk about obtaining that proper gear and equipment to get you to the top. Basically, what's the goal of your training? I say 4 months, but I think if you have longer than 4 months, you want to really try and bring the very best possible physical version of yourself to the trek, and training your body to do that is the first key. A lot of people say, well, I do marathons, I'm Ironman, I do century rides. And what I'll just say is, if you took more time and trained, could you be stronger? And I think we all would say yes with that, so you really want to train towards your goal, which is getting to the summit of Kilimanjaro and getting back down safely, and reading your itinerary and knowing what you're going to do day by day will help you do that. So just like your treks, your training has to be with the focus on safety. I think the very first thing that everybody should do is really visit your own personal healthcare provider, get a good checkup, discuss your health with your healthcare provider, tell them what you're going to do, and really start with that safety base. Now would be the time to start eating right and losing weight, drinking water, getting enough sleep and rest at night. Really, I found that when you're preparing the trek for the high mountains, or when you're actually on the mountain, it's about 90% mental. That kind of sounds amazing. It's 90% mental when you're up there. It's probably only 5% physical. What? 5% physical? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's 5% physical. I think it's 3% depending on your clothing and gear. And that leaves about 2% left. Anyone want to guess what that 2% is in the mix? It's luck. It's kind of funny to think that you got to kind of surrender your trek to luck, but the percentages may sound off, but believe me, mental strength is the most important strength you can take with you. If you think you can't do it, you're right. You can't do it. If you think you can, you absolutely can. Really, I don't think I've ever stood on the summit of the mountain with anyone that said they couldn't do it and they didn't want to do it. So when you say I can't, what you're really saying is I won't. So staying positive on your trek is a very important part of your training. And once you get physically strong enough and you get familiar with your gear and you know where you're going, how you're going to get there, it's much easier to really have that positive mental attitude. Not being physically prepared, not being properly dressed, having poor equipment is a surefire way of losing that mental can-do attitude and not standing on the summit. I do want to mention a word of luck in your training. It may only be 2% in the overall success equation, but it's an important 2%. One time I was in a Chinese food restaurant and I got a fortune cookie, and it said that luck and good fortune tend to shine on the experienced and the prepared. And I really kind of found that that's what your training is going to be about. You're going to have experience. You're going to be prepared when you go on the mountain, and luck will shine on you. So you already know it's important to be physically fit and ready for the trek. You're committed, but there's another reason why you really need to train hard, and that's your climb group. You're going to be climbing with 8, 10, 12, maybe more people just like you, with the same hopes, the same dreams, the same desires, people that want to stand on the summit, people that want to get back down. And if you fail to prepare and their trip is impacted, how would you feel about that? Imagine if you did train and prepare and they didn't, and your trip was impacted negatively with that. So you're not only training for yourself, you're not only training for your goal, but you're also training for your climb team. They count on you as much as you count on them. So, I know I'm getting kind of high level, but I just want to mention 3 more things before we drill down specifically on the 5 areas of your training that I want you to focus on. There's really 3 things you need to develop during your training and bring with you to the mountain: the proper mindset, a good skill set, and the proper tool set. That mind, body, spirit thing is very important when you train. You need a good skill set. You need to feel comfortable in the outdoors, comfortable with your equipment, comfortable with your clothing. And once again, that tool set, all of that stuff that you're going to bring with you. So let's just talk a quick minute about the 5 fitness areas that I think you need to focus on in your 4-month training program. The first thing is your aerobic ability. You need a strong cardio. The breath has got to go in and out, and the blood's got to go round and round, and you have to have that happen efficiently. So strong aerobic ability is number 1. The next thing you want to focus on is your core strength. The muscles that work together to support your body. We all have heard that all your strength comes from the core, and it's totally true. Work on those abs and obliques. Upper body strength. You're going to be carrying a backpack. It's not going to weigh a whole lot, maybe 15, maybe 25 pounds. You're going to be reaching with your arms, kind of boulder, up and down, maybe a little bit on Kilimanjaro. But upper body strength is important. Lower body strength, very important. Kilimanjaro is a leg mountain. Your legs are going to get up there, but your legs kind of enhance your overall body appearance, performance. So you want to work on your glutes, your hips, your thighs, your legs, your calves, things like that. And the 5th thing is your flexibility and balance. You need to, make sure you don't get injured. So you want to be warmed up, flexible, stretch your muscles, be able to do those deep range of motions and movements. And you're not walking on a sidewalk. These aren't groomed trails. They're pretty defined, but having good flexibility and balance is kind of the key. So what do I think you should do? I think everybody should first, if you look at the Embark package that you have, there is a pre-printed 4-month training program that tells you week by week what you should be doing. But basically, you don't really need any special equipment. You don't need, to have a gym membership. if you do a simple internet search for aerobic activities like running, biking, walking is important, skipping rope, sure, if you have an elliptical machine or things like that. The internet can kind of be your friend when it comes to what you're going to do, but you need to develop a good midweek workout routine that's going to focus on those 5 areas of fitness that we talked about, and really progressively through the 4-month or plus training program, you're going to go bigger, stronger, harder, faster. You know, that's kind of what we're focusing on with that. I think it's nice to say, like, with COVID, I don't really know how gyms work where you're at, but if you can get to a gym, it's a modest investment. It might be worth it. And sometimes this happens when you join a gym, you get like a consultation with a personal trainer, which is really nice to do. So I think, we can get into exercises, but I think if you have a midweek, which we'll call a midweek workout routine that focuses on those 5 areas over a 5 to 8 month time period, you're going to be, an optimal chance for success on the mountain. I've really seen very fit people struggle the most on the mountain, really because they're hitting like an experience that they've never had before. I like to use a marathon as kind of what I'm talking about. If you ever run a marathon, or if you ever train for a marathon, or if you can ever imagine training for a marathon, it's a big deal, but think of it like this. When you train for a marathon, you're going to be training for 4 or 5 months really hard. And then on your event day, you're going to be pushing your body really hard for 4 or 5 hours. And then after that, you celebrate, you go out to dinner, you have the meal you want, you soak in a tub you want. But now let's look at something like Kilimanjaro. You're going to train really hard for 4 to 5 months. And then when your trek starts, you're going to work really hard for 4 or 5 hours before lunch. And then you're going to work 4 or 5 hours really hard after lunch. And you're going to do that for almost 2 weeks straight. At the end of your day, you're not going back to a hotel. You're going to crawl into a tent and you're going to sleep on the ground. You're going to be carrying a backpack, 15 to 20 pounds. Anything that you need, you're not going to pass an aid station to get a drink. You're going to carry it with you. And then imagine doing that marathon with half the amount of oxygen at sea level than you would get on the mountain. So you can train really hard for marathon and see, like if you want to play football, you don't play baseball. You train, and this midweek workout routine isn't really going to be enough. What you're going to have to also do is get out and hike during these 14 months. So I'll call them practice hikes or training hikes. Every week, find a trail or a park or some place where you can strap on all your gear and go out and hike. And you can see how you feel, get feedbacks on your level of fitness, see how your equipment works, see how you take on nutrition and hydration in the field. And you could just keep going on longer and harder practice hikes. And at the end of that 4-month period, you're going to know that you're physically fit and you're going to be very comfortable with your gear and clothing. So that's kind of like, I think, a very big nutshell of where you should be with the training. If you can have a training buddy, that works out really good. I think when you state your goal, when you know what your goal is and you share that with family and friends, they can kind of keep you on track. But think of midweek workout, focusing on those 5 areas that we talked about: the aerobic ability, core strength, lower body, upper body flexibility and balance, and then midweek training routine. And you're kind of right on track for where we need you to be to get you on the mountain.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. We did get 2 questions from Nathan. One was, what kind of cardio would you recommend? HIIT, running, bike, jiu-jitsu? That's the first question. And the second one is, would you suggest hiking with a weighted vest, and what weight would you recommend?
Sure. Both great questions. I think, first off, you have to find something that you like doing, because if you have cardio that you don't like to do, it's kind of useless. So I think the best thing you could possibly do is walk. If you could walk 2, 3, 4 times a week with your backpack, with your hiking boots, and we talk about gear in a moment, it's very important that you break that gear in. So I would say walking is number 1. The next activity that you want to pick is just one that's fun for you, whether it's, on an elliptical machine. Like I love taking spin classes. It could be on the treadmill. It could be running. It could be jumping rope. It could be swimming. It could be cycling. But something else you should think about is what I think I'll call your targeted heart rate, where you want to get your heart beating at its like optimum rate, to get you the most benefit and growth for that. So everybody should try and figure out what their, targeted heart rate is. And it's not that complicated to figure out. I think if you take the number 220 and subtract your age from that, that's what your targeted heart rate should be when you work out with your cardio. So I'm 60 years old, so I like to work out at like between 140 and 160, get my heart rate pumping to that, and keep that going for as long as you can, or then back off and get it back up to 160. Like some of the machines that you use have the cardio, the heart rate right on it. So I would say do anything you want as long as you get yourself up to that targeted heart rate and start your growth at that. The other question was what, Donovan? I lost your voice.
Would you recommend wearing a weighted vest, and what weight would you recommend?
Okay, great. You know what? I like to wear a weighted vest. I think that's kind of subjective. Like, I think conditioning and then getting stronger, like I'm kind of going to view that as two separate things. Like I don't want to build mass and muscle. Like I want to tone what I have, so for me, it might be something different. What I would suggest, instead of wearing a weighted vest, get used to your backpack. So I put an extra weight in my backpack. I do get kind of looks at the gym if I'm wearing my backpack, on the treadmill or the elliptical, but I do it anyway. I kind of like the looks, so for me, I would want to transfer the weighted vest to the weighted backpack, So we'll talk about what you might have on your backpack on a typical trek, or what you might have or what you will have on Kilimanjaro. I would just take an 8-pound weight, and I pick 8 pounds because that's about what a gallon of water weighs, 8 pounds. So if you're going to wear a vest and you'd rather wear the vest, I'd say wear 8 to 10 pounds, or I put 8 to 10 pounds in my pack and train with that.
Good. Great. One other question about training, and it's really about heat. Heat is a huge factor right now in San Diego, especially inland where there's more elevation. Nicole went for a 4-mile hike with moderate elevation today, but ended at 3 hours because it was well over 92. So any suggestions on still getting in hours on the trail with the heat? Back to shorter hikes, multiple shorter hikes? What would you recommend?
Well, I would guess, okay, I'm a little envious of the heat, but I guess it's what you don't have is what you want, but I do understand. I've hiked in the Grand Canyon when it was 112 degrees, so I know how the heat can sap you, I think personally, you can hike safely at any temperature if you're prepared, and if you have the proper clothing and you can hike safely just about at any temperature. But I would think for our intents and purposes, I would start early, on Kilimanjaro, especially on summit night, you're going to be hiking in the dark. So it might be a really good training exercise to start at 4 or 5 in the morning, put your headlamp on and navigate the trail with your headlamp. It's kind of cool because, you get different shadows and things. It requires different placement of your feet, a little bit more caution and things. So starting before sunrise might be a good way to train with that. And, then hike before it gets too hot, like maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, you could be off the trail, or do it backwards, hike about an hour before sundown and then hike a little bit in the dark back to the car. So I think if you hike, both ways, starting early or starting late, you get a different feel for the trail once it gets dark.
Great. Thank you. All right. So we're kind of halfway through tonight. So I think we're going to jump into gear. This is kind of the second part tonight. And so gear is one of those things. Yes, sir.
Real quick, I actually had a suggestion. I don't know how to work for people for COVID, but when I had to train before, I couldn't get outside. So here would be the same example. So I used to take my files and put it in a backpack and go up and down the stairs in the office building. So there you got a air conditioned environment. I know with COVID and stuff that might not work, or you might not have access. I don't know, but that was something that worked for me simply because of the timing. I couldn't get to the gym and I was already at the office. So why not? Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I've heard of other people doing that too. All right, so let's jump into gear. Gear is one of those things that we at Embark, we try to provide, a framework, but it's a lot of people want it to be definitive. And so we've provided, everyone with an outline of what the gear should be. So Mike, kind of talk through, starting like maybe from feet to your head on what you think of different pieces of gear. Obviously the core things are really the boots, the core things are the shell and maybe the hats, and just kind of talk through, what you think is important with gear. And then again, people, if anyone wants to submit questions about gear, we can kind of go from there. There's a lot to gear, but just, maybe start with shoes or however you want to do it.
Oh, good, because I was going to go off the reservation a little bit
Okay.
with gear. I hope it's okay. Steer me back if I'm going, because I think, we've done a number of these calls, and I know that you say the hardest question that you get is, what's the weather going to be like? What kind of weather will I expect there? That's your hardest question. And to me, that's like an easy question. Like, the climate is what you can expect and the weather is what you get. That's it. Move on. But for me, the hardest question I get on the calls is people say, look, I got this gear list. How much is this going to cost? We're all talking about going outside of our comfort zones on the mountain, but no one really knows how much the trip is going to cost or how much the clothes for the trip is going to cost. So I do want to talk a little bit about quality outdoor gear and what you might expect to spend and why you should spend your money wisely and smartly, but also get the best bang for your buck. So can we do that for a minute and before we drill down on exactly what you're supposed to have? Does that sound like it makes sense? Okay. I don't want to scare anybody, but in my experience, kind of what I kind of do for myself is I look at 1/3 of the cost of the trip and I budget that for my equipment. So let's say this trip is going to cost $4,000. I'm kind of thinking, all right, so maybe upwards of $1,000 for my gear. Like, that's what I'm thinking. So I would say if you don't have anything at all and you're going on a trip to Kilimanjaro, if you had about $1,000 to spend, that might be a good point. You could spend a lot more and you can definitely spend less, but I'm just trying to give you a framework, and I'm going from you have nothing. Okay. So I think the first thing you need to know when it comes to gear is shopping smart. Quality outdoor adventure gear doesn't cost, it pays. So you really do get what you pay for. And kind of the way I look at it is, nothing is expensive if it has value. So if it has value and you're worth it, it's not expensive. So shopping smart, the first thing I think everybody should do is go to like a quality outdoor adventure store like REI, EMS. There's a lot of mom and pop stores out there, places that have trained salespeople that use the gear that they sell. And you can talk to them and you can touch the stuff and you can hold it and you can try it on. They really like have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to what you're going to do and how you can do it. That being said, when you go to these stores, stuff costs more there. You might be able to find it cheaper online, but I kind of throw the caution flag with online shopping because you can't hold it. You can't try it on. So what I say is go to the store, touch everything, look at the model number, even pick your color, and then go online and search for it. You might be able to find it cheaper. But salespeople really can help you a lot. If you have buddies or friends that have hiked before, maybe you could borrow stuff. That would be a way to cut down cost. Sometimes you can rent gear. If you talk to Embark when you go to Kilimanjaro, it is possible to rent gear. A lot of stores sell used, or you can go online and buy it used if you do it smartly. Another thing I like to do is people always say, wow, we never know what to get you for Christmas or your birthday. Well, birthday or holiday times may be coming up. So, another way to defray a cost is to put that on your gift list. And the final thing I'll say is maybe to save money a little bit is sell it after you're done. Hey, you may love doing this and you may keep this and use it in the future, but you know what? There's a big market for used gear online. So you may be able to get back as much as half of your investment when it comes to selling your gear after you use it. So all of those things are ways to think about how you can take your price point of about $1,000 and get the best bang for your buck. The last thing I'll say for that is, I always say this: trust but verify. Believe everything I tell you. Believe everything you get online. Believe every single salesperson that you talk to, but verify it for yourself. Because hiking isn't an exact science. It's like a series of experiments. What works for you may not work for me. What I love, you may hate. So take everything at face value and then really drill down to see if that works for you. Make sense? So you know, you got this great gear list from Embark, you know, but I really want to key in on 4 or 5 items that I think are the most important, where you shouldn't cut corners and you should really pay a lot of attention to and get as educated as you can about. And then we'll kind of back off on the things that you can have like a lot of wiggle room, a lot of latitude when you're getting it. The first thing you got to remember about gear, especially on Kilimanjaro, is there's weight limits. You know, you can only have, I think it's 33 pounds on Kilimanjaro on your duffel that your porter is going to carry you. And I think one of my shoes weighs 23 pounds. You know, so, you know, if you have like one pair of my pants may be like 4 or 5 pants if the lady were to bring them, you know, so weight consciousness is very important as well. You know, so I want to talk about 4 items in particular that you really need to spend a lot of time with. And the first one is my favorite, my sleeping bag. You know, sleeping bags on the mountain are very important. A lot of people are worried about, you know, acclimatization to the altitude on Kilimanjaro, and you should be concerned about it a little bit. It can be tough, but all of that happens while you sleep. So if you're not comfortable and you're not sleeping, you're not going to have a good time on the mountain. Your body is not going to adjust to that altitude. So you need to learn a lot about sleeping bags. Embark recommends that you have a 10-degree sleeping bag. But you need to know a lot about sleeping bags because there's no industry standard on that. If your bag says it's good for 10 degrees, that's because that's what the manufacturer wanted to put on that tag. I'm sure they kind of did their own research, but there's nothing to hold their feet to the fire about that claim. So when you get a 10-degree bag, it's what they say it is. You know, another thing is, it doesn't mean you're going to be warm at 10 degrees. It just means you're not going to freeze to death. You know, so usually what people say is you add 10 degrees to the rated comfort, and that's where you're going to feel like a little bit of warmth. So if you get a 10-degree bag, you'll probably be really comfortable down to 20 degrees. If you want to be comfortable at 10, you should get a 0-degree bag. It's a little bit of an insider tip. The other thing about sleeping bags is they come specifically for men and women. You know, there's women sleep warmer than men. They're different body. It needs to be padded and insulated in different places. So I would say shop gender specific for your bag. They do have unisex bags, but that's kind of like a compromise in between. So the next thing you should know about your sleeping bag is what it's filled with, what makes it warm. You know, it could be natural material like down or synthetic material. Down's really good. It's light. It keeps you warm, but if it gets wet, it's no good. You know, it loses all its insulating properties. Synthetic's better, but it's heavier and more expensive. So you really got to look at sleeping bags a lot. So I would say prepare to spend around $300 for your sleeping bag. Very important piece of equipment. Don't skimp on that and do a lot of research on your bag. I could talk for hours on sleeping bags. The next thing about sleeping bags is manufacturers assume 2 things. They assume you're going to sleep with like a base layer in their bag. So you know, you got to wear that. And then also you're going to have a quality ground cloth, ground pad that's going to like keep you about 2 inches, 3 inches off the ground. So you'll also need a blow up sleeping pad with you. You know, not like a glorified yoga mat. It's not like the kind of pool floaty that you have, but like something like a Sea to Summit or a Thermarest pad. Very, very important. And once again, you're going to look at like the $150 price point for about that. So you could see just on 2 items, we're almost up to $500. So that $1,000 doesn't sound so bad now. Next item that you shouldn't skimp on is your backpack. Having a quality backpack is very, very important on Kilimanjaro. You should be measured, like your torso length, you should be professionally measured for your backpack. So this might be one of the good reasons why you go to that adventure outdoor store and they'll measure you for your backpack and they'll fit it for you properly. It should have padded shoulder straps. It should have padded waist belt, not like a little like nylon webbing, but actually like a padded waist belt. So about 40% of your pack is going to like be carried on your waist. And you should have an adjustable sternum strap. So those kind of 3 features, the padded waist strap, the sternum strap, and the padded waist belt are things you should be looking at. The size of your bag, once again, you could tell your salesperson that you're going to be carrying, you know, between 25 and 15 to 25 pounds for like 2 weeks and you want to be comfortable. And they'll kind of steer you in the right direction for the pack. But once again, there you're probably looking at like the $100 to $200 mark again for your backpack. So backpacks are important. The interior volume of your backpack is kind of important too. probably a 2 to 3 liter backpack, or 2,500 cubic inches is about the size that you would need for your backpack. So once again, if you talk to your salesperson, they'll steer you in the right direction for that. And the final big top 4 item that you have is your boots. Really, just like the Army, a hiker marches on their boots, and it's so very important. Features for your boot, I think first off, you need ankle support, number 1. So it shouldn't be like a low cut boot. It should be like an ankle boot. It should be waterproof. Breathable is also very important. Something that not many people think about is how the boot is constructed. Like, you don't want a metal, like you can get like a safety boot with a metal toe, or it could have a metal shank. You don't want that, because that'll get cold. That'll conduct the coldness of the mountain right into your boot. So make sure there's no metal in your boot. So ankle support, breathable, waterproof, really important. So what are you looking at boots? Maybe $150, like kind of that area. So like those 4 items are kind of up to $600 or $700. So you see kind of where it adds up. A lot of boots nowadays, they say, look, no break-in. There's no break-in period required, fresh out of the box. Trust them, but verify it for yourself. We like to say that nothing is more cringeworthy for a guide or on the mountain is for someone to open up the boot box and start taking the stuffing out and lacing it, saying, I got my boots and I'm ready to go. They really have to be broken in. You should have hundreds of miles on your back boots before you get to Kilimanjaro. Wear them on your training hikes. Wear them, in your workout sessions. I go to the gym with my hiking boots. So really feel very comfortable with all your equipment. Those are the top 4 things that everybody should really pay a lot of attention to. I can kind of skim over some of the other stuff just to say it's important. It's all important. When you look at the gear list that Embark gave you, you should say, should I have all that stuff on that list? You should absolutely have everything on that list. You're going to get all this stuff. You need a little scale to weigh it. You need to practice wearing it. When you get to Kilimanjaro, you're going to meet your guides, and they're going to go back up to your hotel room, and you're going to lay out all your gear, and you're going to show them everything that you have, because you need everything on that list. And they're going to feel comfortable with everything that you have. And if you don't have everything that you have, that's going to be a problem. They're going to be hustling, trying to rent you gear at the last minute, and you get what you get. So really try and follow that list. Where you get some leeway is with, let's say, numbers of things on the list. So you'll see on the list 2 long sleeve shirts and 2 short sleeve shirts, 2 pairs of pants, 6 pairs of socks, 4 pairs of underwear. You could kind of play with the quantities of each thing, but don't change the thing that you need. For instance, for me, I only like long sleeve t-shirts. For me, if I want a short sleeve one, I'll roll it up. It gives me sun protection on the mountain. So I kind of cut corners that way. But when you're looking at the clothing that you're going to get, I always like to just say, shop for what I call technical outdoor attire. Like technical material, like keeps you warm when it's cold out and cool when it's hot out. The same shirt will do both things if it's made with the right material. Stay away from cotton. Cotton is not like a good thing to bring on these treks. Another thing when it comes to your clothing is you got to think about layering your clothes. On Kilimanjaro, you're going to be going through 5 different eco zones, from basically, like rainforest to Arctic and everything in between. So all your clothes, you might need like a head to toe rethink on like what you want to bring, so layering is going to be the key to that. But if your clothes aren't big enough to wear over top of each other, you're going to have a problem. So you're going to need, like, let's say, a light base layer or some light, like long underwear, let's call it. You're going to need some heavy long underwear, and then you're going to need some winter hiking pants, let's say. So all 3 of those things you're going to wear on summit night. So you're going to have one, kind of like a compression base layer, a mid layer, and then some hiking pants over that. So when you go to try them on in the store, you're going to have to bring all that stuff with you to make sure that those pants fit over that. And then you may even need 2 extra layers depending on what happens on Kilimanjaro that night. You might have to put on a shell and then some rain pants over that. So you can imagine how wearing 5 layers up the mountain, if it doesn't fit right and it's not comfortable, it isn't going to work. So pay attention to sizing and layering if you can. Trekking poles are something too that I kind of wanted to talk about. If you're familiar with trekking poles, I've hiked for 50 years, and I've only started to use them in the last 10 or 20 years. And I could have kicked myself. Trekking poles add just such another level to your performance. You really need to look into getting those. It's almost like required on Kilimanjaro. Going up and going down, trekking poles can save your life. So I might want to add that as that fifth thing on the don't skimp scale. You can go to Walmart or Target and get some trekking poles for $20, but then guess what? You got a $20 pair of trekking poles. You know, they don't have all the features that like a $100 pair of trekking poles can be. So Google trekking poles, go YouTube, check out some trekking pole videos, and spend a lot of time with that. But I know I'm kind of going off the reservation a little bit with the clothing, but suffice it to say, technical attire, not cotton. Make sure it's fit properly, make sure you can layer it, and make sure that you're weight conscious. All of this stuff is going to go in a duffel bag that your porter is going to carry up the mountain. The only thing you're going to carry every day is your day pack with that 15 or 20 pounds worth of gear in it that you use for that day. So your duffel bag is going to have to be big enough to fit all the stuff in here that you're bringing with you. So I would go through that checklist. I would buy the gear that you want and save your duffel bag for last. I think the smallest one you could probably get is maybe 95 liters, but you may need like a large North Face duffel to fit all the gear that you have. But the duffel would be the last thing I would buy, and my trekking boots would be the first thing I buy. So I don't know how much more detailed you want me to get into that, Donovan, but that's kind of where I think we should be with the gear.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Mike. We do have a few questions here. Do you have a specific recommendation on boots? This seems to be a topic a lot of people like to ask.
Oh my gosh, I don't. I think that, you know, I've seen that, you know, because we go with groups, women tend to go with a certain type of boot and guys tend to gravitate with another style of boot, but it really has to do with fit, form, and function. I think what you have to do is you have to research hiking boots a little bit. You have to kind of figure out what you think your budget would be comfortable with, and then go try on a whole bunch of them. You know, that's why shopping online for boots is one of those things that I kind of steer people away from. Everybody's foot is totally different. I'd say search for the features first. You want the boot to fit properly. You want it to have the right support. You want it to be waterproof. You want it to be breathable. And you want it to be comfortable. That's the best advice I can give you. The boot has to fit right. Hiking boots don't fit the way other boots do. So having a salesperson fit you with that is the key. You know, a lot of outdoor stores have like a little, you know, stone mountain that you actually climb up in the store so you can see how the boot feels. You know, like in a nutshell, like you put the boot on, if you could take your index finger and slide it back along your back of your heel and touch the bottom of your sole, you need that little space in there, because when you wear socks, like I said, you may have to wear layered socks, winter socks, summer socks. Fitting is more important than brand. Don't skimp on your boot. Get it fitted properly and make sure it has the features that we want.
Yeah. So we have another question, which I think is a really good one, regarding insulated jackets for summit night. You know, there's so many different levels of those right now. What do you tend to recommend? That's kind of a loaded question. I guess it depends upon the location. In terms of how insulated should it be for the summit night?
Okay. Once again, I'm talking like layering your clothes at all times. You know, so your jacket is part of a system. It doesn't stand alone, you know. So what I had on Kilimanjaro is like a light puffy jacket, basically like a down jacket. It was an Under Armour jacket, very thin, but I wore layers underneath it. So, you know, is the jacket windproof? Is it waterproof? Is it not? You know, so it really is hard. It's really hard to say. You know, I would say having a down jacket or a puffy jacket that you could pack up really tight is a good thing to have, but that's not the only thing that you're going to have. You know, you're going to have at least 2 base layers on. You're going to have like a fleece on, and then you could even get a shell jacket that just kind of acts as insulation around that to keep the wind off you. And over top of that, you could have that light puffy jacket. So it's part of a system. It doesn't stand alone.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that's a good response, because I think in the past on some of the treks that we've had, people want to get the, the Arctic jackets that are -30 or something like that, and they're just too big, they're too expensive, and there's a movement towards smaller insulated puffy jackets. So yeah, using that, Nicole, with a shell and all your base layers and your fleece should probably work well for you. A couple more here. Glacier Glasses are just a really awesome pair, polarized. I guess that's just probably personal preference. Yes, you do need a polarized pair of glasses. You don't necessarily need Glacier Glasses on Kilimanjaro. Anything else? Decent brands for trekking poles? Yeah, again, Nathan, I think that'd be going to REI and just checking out what they have there right now, or even looking online. I can't even think of the name of some of the trekking poles. Craig, what are your thoughts? Do you know any good names of trekking brands?
Yeah, Lecky is pretty common. Black Diamond.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
There's a few others, but Lecky's probably the most kind of famous, I suppose. Black Diamond's making a lot of them now too.
Yep. Great.
I think just a quick thing about the trekking poles is 2 features, or maybe 3 features that you may want to think about. The higher end trekking poles have shock absorbers in them. So when you're hiking with them, there's a little give and take, which is very nice. If you buy the lower end brands, it's just a static pole. So if you could afford that like little shock absorbing action of that little shock inside the trekking pole, that's a nice feature. The other feature is the way it expands. So the trekking poles can expand and contract based on whether you're going uphill, downhill, how tall you are, or things like that. And there's 2 kind of locks. One's like a twist lock that could be very hard to operate in colder situations, and it tends to have a little bit of a failure rate. They work great when they work, or you could have like a camber locking system. So like you could spend a lot of time looking at trekking poles, but I would look at 2 features. One is the shock absorber feature, and the other is feel very comfortable about how it stays locked in the position that you finally get it into. 2 big features.
Great. And one last thing, Mike, can you address, I'm a big advocate for ponchos, and I just always think it's important to have a durable poncho. Just talk the group through the poncho, because if any of you show up without a poncho on your trek, I'm going to be upset.
Oh my gosh, I hate ponchos, but I have them because I know. Well, here's the thing: you need quality rain gear on your trek. There's no doubt about that. And it's not like when you go to Disney World and there's a downpour and you buy the $5 poncho in the bag. Like it's not that. It's not that. So I would say that you need a rain gear has to work in your clothing system. Right? So you need a quality rain pants and a quality rain jacket with a hood. That being said, you could go, having breathable stuff is good, but I'll just say rain gear like that, pants and jacket. And a nice plus with the pants is if it has a zipper that goes all the way up the outside seam, so you don't have to struggle getting it over your boots and things. So you need that jacket and you need those pants. But in addition to that, having a poncho is an awesome thing because first